The way by which power is acquired and sustained has not changed. Today's princes walk along the same paths as the princes of the past, glancing back for guidance. And with every prince, the path becomes more polished and better acquainted. Machiavelli's The Prince speaks true of the actions that princes must take to get to where they're going to and to stay there. Although it was written over 500 years ago, in reading it, one will draw clear parallels to the actions of today's prince, Barack Obama. Machiavelli's intent in writing The Prince is debated, but ultimately it's inconsequential because princes will interpret the work in alignment to their needs. Our political environment may owe a lot to Machiavelli, but it may also be that the observations laid out in The Prince and their execution are both manifestations of the truths of power, codependent in nature. Whatever the case, the parallels are uncanny. The nobles, seeing they cannot withstand the people, begin to cry up the reputation of one of themselves, and they make him a prince, so that under his shadow they can give vent to their ambitions. The people, finding they cannot resist the nobles, also cry up the reputation of one of themselves, and make him a prince, so as to be defended by his authority. He who obtains sovereignty by the assistance of the nobles maintains himself with more difficulty than he who comes to it by the aid of the people, because the former finds himself with many around him who consider themselves his equal, and because of this he can neither rule nor manage them to his liking. The worst that a prince may expect from a hostile people is to be abandoned by them. But from a hostile nobles, he has not only to fear abandonment, but also that they will rise against him. For they, being in these affairs more far-seeing and astute, always come forward in time to save themselves. There has always been a tug-of-war relationship between the nobles and the people. The ruling classes live under constant threat from the general population, just because there are more of us. We, in the end, are the deciding factor. This motivates the nobles to try and raise one of their own to power. Unfortunately, we have this tendency to want to be protected, so we too try to empower one of our own. Today, this takes the form of elections, and usually the puppet prince wins. But being the choice of the elite is not as safe as one might think, because when a prince is brought to power by the very same entity he can't control, then he's left with two choices: submission or death. This can be either political or literal death. The prince chosen by the people too has to be wary of the nobles. Once in power, he quickly learns that he must bend to the wills of others. Even the most morally uncompromising, well-intentioned prince who wants to do good unto his people cannot be successful, because once he acts out of favor, he no longer has a secure hold on his power and is discarded. This again can take the form of assassination or destruction of character, depending on how serious his transgressions were. So keeping this in mind, let's imagine that Ron Paul, the People's Prince, won the 2012 presidential election. Can we seriously think that he would have been permitted to do any good? They would have either killed his spirit or ended him. If the vehicle of politics is designed to never work in our favor, then we need to get out. When a leading citizen becomes the prince of his country, not by wickedness or any intolerable violence, but by the favor of his fellow citizens, this may be called a civil principality. Nor is genius or fortune altogether necessary to attain it, but rather a happy shrewdness. I say then that such a principality is obtained either by the favor of the people or by the favor of the nobles. America has recently become a perfected civil principality. With Obama, we've seen an evolution from Machiavelli's time. Prince Obama was handpicked by the equivalent of today's nobles, and then marketed to the people for their consent. There's no longer an either-or. Instead, we have a combination. The nobles pick and the manufactured consent of the people. Obama's strategy seems to have been pulled directly from the pages of The Prince. He follows the advice of Machiavelli on almost everything. Different from popular belief, Machiavelli does not favor the quality of fear over love. Instead, he would prefer the prince to have both attributes, and only favors fear if both cannot be achieved. One of the reasons for his choice is that men have less scruple in offending one who is beloved than one who is feared, for love is preserved by the link of obligation, which, owing to the baseness of men, is broken at every opportunity for their advantage. But fear preserves you by a dread of punishment, which never fails. Another is that being feared is under the prince's control, while being loved is subject to the people. And a wise prince should establish himself on that which is in his own control and not in that of others. Our prince has achieved both love and fear, and in a brilliant way. He's done so by becoming a celebrity. This allows Obama to disassociate from dominance, fear, and cruelty, leaving these qualities to be associated to the entity of government. This way, Obama gets away with being loved, while his government is still feared. The most concerning parallel between the prince and our prince is the focus on warfare. A prince ought to have no other aim or thought, nor select anything else for his study than war and its rules and discipline, for this is the sole art that belongs to him who rules. A scary truth indeed. America today has involvement in at least 75 countries, with the highest claims being at 120. While we're on the subject of colonies, Machiavelli writes, "The men ought either to be well treated or crushed, because they can avenge themselves of lighter injuries, of more serious ones they cannot." Everything that goes on in the Middle East and Africa is done with this in mind. Principalities are liable to danger when they are passing from the civil to the absolute order of government, for such princes either rule personally or through magistrates. In the latter case, their government is weaker and more insecure, because it rests entirely on the goodwill of those citizens who are raised to the magistracy, and who, especially in troubled times, can destroy the government with great ease, either by intrigue or open defiance. And the prince has not the chance amid tumults to exercise absolute authority, because the citizens and subjects, accustomed to receive orders from magistrates, are not of a mind to obey him amid these confusions, and there will always be in doubtful times a scarcity of men who he can trust. Machiavelli points out that when magistrates, which are today's Congress, hold power, then the state power is weakened, because it depends on their action. This is, of course, one of the beauties of a republic, having an entity that keeps the prince in check. Keeping this in mind, we should not be surprised at Obama's defiance to the Congress and expansion of executive power. Sustaining the happiness of your people may be the most powerful weapon of a prince. This is partially done through distraction. He ought to entertain the people with festivals and spectacles, but also by keeping the whole people encouraged. Our prince's entire image was and continues to be based on hope and promises of utopian growth. He also knows how to keep the populace in need of him and his government, or as I like to call it, giverment. A wise prince ought to adopt such a course that his citizens will always, in every sort and kind of circumstance, have need of the state and of him, and then he will always find them faithful. Machiavelli also notes that keeping favor with guilds, which are today's unions, is beneficial. As every city is divided into guilds or into societies, he ought to hold such bodies in esteem and associate with them. Everyone admits how praiseworthy it is in a prince to keep faith, and to live with integrity and not with craft. Nevertheless, our experience has been that those princes who have done great things have held good faith of little account, and have known how to circumvent the intellect of men by craft, and in the end have overcome those who relied on their word. One would think that an extraordinary string of broken promises would hurt a prince, But as Machiavelli points out, it's really inconsequential and actually beneficial for a ruler to lie as long as he knows how to do it well. But it is necessary to know well how to disguise this characteristic and to be a great pretender and dissembler. And men are so simple and so subject to present necessities that he who seeks to deceive will always find somebody who will allow himself to be deceived. Machiavelli goes on to say that to truly be merciful, faithful, humane, religious, upright will be damaging to a prince. Instead, he should be perceived this way while acting in an opposite manner. It is unnecessary for a prince to have all the good qualities I have enumerated, but it is very necessary to appear to have them. This strategy works well because everyone sees what you appear to be, few really know what you are, and those few dare not oppose themselves to the opinion of the many, who have the majesty of the state to defend them. Obama is simply following suit. Most of the princes of our past were great masters of deception, so it's only natural that this be continued. Alexander never did what he said. Caesar never said what he did. He finishes the chapter on keeping faith by referring to the success of Ferdinand of Aragon. One prince of the present time never preaches anything else but peace and good faith, and to both he is most hostile, and either, if he had kept it, would have deprived him of reputation and kingdom many a time. Nothing changes. Machiavelli suggests that the prince arm those who he trusts to love him and to fight for him, while disarming those who may pose a threat. In the context of his time, this would mean arming your citizens and disarming your colonies, aka newly acquired principalities. When a prince acquires a new state, then it is necessary to disarm the men of that state, except those who have been his adherents in acquiring it. Again, we have seen an evolution of this concept. Obama arms those loyal to him, the military and the police. The general public, however, is being systematically disarmed. He's treating Americans as newly conquered principalities, which may be his downfall. Machiavelli states that when you disarm them, you at once offend them by showing that you distrust them, either for cowardice or for want of loyalty, and either of these opinions breeds hatred against you. Obama, I'm not sure if you read The Prince, but if you haven't, do, and pay close attention to the following. A prince ought to inspire fear in such a way that he avoids hatred, because he can endure very well being feared whilst he is not hated, which will always be as long as he abstains from the property of his citizens. I think all those foreclosures might be remembered. I repeat, it is necessary for a prince to have the people friendly, otherwise he has no security in adversity. Remember, Obama, you need the people to like you to keep this facade alive. Yet it cannot be called talent to slay fellow citizens, to deceive friends, to be without faith, without mercy, without religion. Such methods may gain you empire, but not glory. How do you want to be remembered? Because so far your history books are tainted. And he who becomes master of a city accustomed to freedom and does not destroy it may expect to be destroyed by it. For in rebellion it is always the watchword of liberty and its ancient privileges as a rallying point. And whatever you may do, they never forget their privileges unless they are disunited or dispersed, but at every chance they immediately rally to them. In republics, there's more vitality, greater hatred, and more desire for vengeance, which will never permit them to allow the memory of their former liberty to rest, so that the safest way is to destroy them. Just try it. Obama has been an ideal prince. I doubt the nobles are at all displeased with his performance. But as they already know, we are the deciding factor. There is hatred building for Obama. His people will not stay friendly long. We feel a deep resentment for him trying to disarm us. This is a warning to Prince Obama and the next prince and all the princes to follow. We see through the lies. We see a threat on our life, liberty, and property. We remember what freedom is. And as long as we have that memory, you will not destroy us.
I'm not saying anything you haven't heard before. No one's gonna wait for you to wake up anymore. Changing all your scenery, saying you don't care.